Solving the mysteries of the universe is a thing that some people enjoy. Some people dedicate their lives to it. But what do they do when they're finished? Assuming they don't die. What do they do when they successfully solve those mysteries or get bored of trying? Maybe they look for a new universe and solve those mysteries. Maybe The Outer Wilds is exactly the game that they need. I'm going to tell you about it. So The Outer Wilds is on Game Pass. It was actually on Game Pass for quite a lot of months. Then it was removed from the service. And it came back, which is fairly unusual in itself. I've not seen many games drop off the service and then get reintroduced, but here it is, ready to go. On The Outer Wilds, you wake up by a little campfire with a kind of fish-faced, biped fish creature NPC roasting marshmallows. You very quickly ascertain that you are a junior astronaut about to go off on your first mission into space. The whole presentation of the game, if you haven't seen already on the screen, is fairly simplistic. It's kind of low texture, cartoony visuals. There's no voiceovers for any of these character interactions, but it's pleasant enough, and the whole game is pretty well physics driven, but we'll get into that in a minute. And yeah, you need to head off into space. You get given a few errands to go and get a launch code that forces you to explore this kind of starting area and learn a little bit more about what your objective might be in this game, what mysteries there are to solve. And without giving too much away, essentially you learn about what's the word? I'm going to go with extinct, but it's not the word that I want. You learn about a kind of extinct race of Forerunners. They're not called Forerunners, they're called Nome, something like that. But essentially a civilization that existed a long time in the past, and you have no idea what happened to them besides the fact that you have one of their statues in a building. And they are a part of the mystery that you need to solve. So your little race of fish people are spacefaring. You're not the first to go into space. You've got some of your buddies are already out there, but you're the first one to go into space that has the capacity to translate texts and technology from this previous civilization. And that's where the game kind of starts. Now, before getting into the spacefaring, I have to say this opening area, this planet that you start on, it also acts as a kind of tutorial and introduction to the game's mechanics and concepts. And it's really well done. So, for example, the flying in the game is fairly complicated. The flying in the game is fairly complicated to pull off. So you've got a series of thrusters on your spaceship that will launch and direct it. And it introduces you to that concept with a model spaceship. So you can fly it around from a kind of third person view. You can view this little model spaceship flying around, and you can visually see and acknowledge the directions of all the little thrusters and all the button inputs to see how they impact your spaceship. You never actually fly the spaceship in the game from that perspective. So you sit in the cockpit, and it really is a neat way to help the player visualize exactly what's going on when you start flying. So I like that as a tutorial. Saying that, did it work? The whole time I played, I was freaking awful at flying that ship. Oh, it is actually called Sun as well, and I am accidentally flying into it. Yeah, that would be a death. So maybe it's a terrible tutorial, but I liked the idea of it. You also learn a few things about the importance of gravity and the way that it's affecting the game around you. And then you blast off into space. And here's where the mysteries kind of start to unfold. So the various NPCs that you're already speaking to give you little trails to follow, different places that your colleagues have already flown off to. So you can choose to go towards the planets that you know have activity, or you can just freely explore and go wherever you want. These planets that you can see are tiny. They're either tiny planets or the fish people are absolutely huge. No, I'm pretty sure they're tiny planets. It does give you some measurements as you're flying around. You can explore them. When you land on any of these given planets, assuming it is one that you can land on, and they're not all, some of them are gas or whatever else, but you land on these planets and you can run around the diameter of one of these mini planets in probably 20-30 seconds, something like that. So they're all small. It's not a huge number of them, to be honest, and they all have some kind of points of interest or things to discover, texts from this previous civilization or things that your buddies have been getting up to. I won't go too much into what you can find and what's going on between all these planets because I'm not here to give you the answers to the mysteries of this little universe. You probably want to do that yourself. But as you're exploring, inevitably you will die. Dying is a part of the game, and it goes a bit 12 minutes on you. And if you know me, you know I absolutely despise 12 minutes, but I don't mean to say that I despise this game. I just mean it has a similar mechanic of you play until you die or fail, and then you wake up at the start and go through it again. So in this case, when you die, the weird little statue that you found on your home world kind of very quickly replays the memories of your adventures, and then it sets you back at that campfire. Now, unlike something like 12 minutes, it doesn't actually introduce a whole heap of new dialogue options or anything like that. The whole world completely resets. You get a couple of dialogue options for our marshmallow roasting friends to acknowledge that your character knows that you reset and died and started again, but everybody else is oblivious and you don't get additional dialogue options or anything along those lines, particularly as far as I've seen so far. And you go out and you do it all again until you die. And it very much falls on the player to solve the mysteries that you want to. There's, you can follow the leads in the order that they were given, but after you have died and reset, you don't need to follow them from the start again. You don't need to replay all of the conversations that you've had. The world is truly reset back into its first state. So when you eventually do solve the mystery, you can kind of beeline towards the places that you know you need to go. It is a case of the player uncovering the mystery and reliving events, rather than the player's character reliving and acknowledging events. There is a logbook that fills up, but you know what I mean. If you don't, then consider that another mystery for you to pursue. Yeah. I'm not going to say too much more about the Outer Wilds. I hope I've been calling it the Outer Wilds through this whole video. I do occasionally slip and call it the Outer Worlds. That's a very different game. This one is just Outer Wilds. If you get the two confused, you'll play the Outer Worlds and you'll think I'm a complete fool that completely misunderstood the game. No, they are different games. Outer Wilds is the subject of today's video. Go and play it if you want to solve a mystery. I didn't mention combat or action at all, because there isn't any. So that's it. Go solve mysteries. Slide around icy comets, fight with gravity, use your little jetpack, repair your landing gear, crash into planets, and discover some things. It is a very well-reviewed game. If you are into mysteries, I would recommend this one. Ramble, ramble, ramble. Did you press the like button yet? You must have done. Thanks. Zip.